All Liam could do was cry as he saw the big, glowing clown shoes walk toward him. That was until...
"Hey, Wacky!"
a voice shouted from the back of the room, to which Wacky Mole turned his head.
"Let me take care of the kid. Hugs and Swirls say they need you in the collection. I can take care of this."
A stocky clown walked out of the darkness, sporting a large golden top hat with a red stripe, red flowing hair, a red nose, and ruby red eyes.
Ugh, fine. Take care of it yourself. I'm guessing those asshats accidentally knocked over Wally's shelves again.
Wacky Mole exclaimed in frustration as he hurriedly stormed out of the room, shoving his way past the clown. Charlie? Liam thought to himself as he watched the clown approach him through blurry vision. Charlie bolted at Liam, kneeling on the floor and grabbing him by his shoulders, and brought him closer to his face.
"Listen up, kid. You have some real nerve coming back here. I normally never do this, but I'm gonna try my best to let you off the hook, alright? Last time we met, I actually liked you. Can't say that about most kids. Point is, I'd rather you live than die. Understood?"
Liam remained completely unfazed by the situation. It seemed that whatever Charlie had told him entered through one ear and went out the other.
"Kid!"
Charlie shook the boy violently by his shoulders, which seemingly snapped him back into reality for a quick second.
What?
He uttered.
"I'm keeping you alive. Understood?"
Through the tears, Liam tried to speak to the best of his abilities. "I want to go home," he stated, in a choked voice.
"This is your new home now. If you'd like to stay alive, that is,"
Charlie said.
"What?"
Liam shouted. Charlie tightened his grip on Liam's shoulders to keep him on the floor.
Hey, quit being hysterical. I'm only trying to help, you know,"
Charlie said with annoyance in his voice. "Why would you want to help me?"
"If you were in my shoes, with what I know about myself, you'd probably have a greater appreciation for life as well, buddy. Don't take this for granted. I could always change my mind."
Charlie scowled and let out a large sigh, letting go of his shoulders, turning his attention behind him.
Jesus Christ. Looks like Wacky had a field day with that one. "Sorry about your friend, pal,"
Charlie said as he stood up and offered his hand down to Liam. He grabbed Charlie by the hand and lifted himself off the floor, tears still streaming down his face.
"Just follow me. I got a place you can crash. Don't worry, I understand this is all happening so fast. Just give me some time to explain. I can get you acquainted with the others later,"
he told Liam as he patted him on the back and led him behind the stage curtains. Behind the curtains was a sliding door, practically invisible. Once opened, Charlie entered, reluctantly followed by Liam. Once inside, Charlie shut the door behind them. "Oh my God." Liam wiped away the tears. Just for a second, he was distracted from the atrocities that occurred moments before. In front of them was a large corridor with hallways branching off to the left and right.
"Welcome to the Speedway, as Wacky likes to call it."
Liam observed his surroundings. Gleaming cement floors reflected the fluorescent lights on the ceiling above, surrounded by blank, gray walls, a stark contrast to the rest of the building. This must be how Wacky made it to the mummy exhibit and back so quickly, Liam thought to himself.
"When we need to get somewhere fast, this is how we do it. All of our designated rooms have a secret door leading to this place. There's a lot of rooms that the public will never be able to see. Some lounges, small office, Wally's, room.
Charlie stated, with a look of disgust as he rolled his eyes. Liam could spot various signs hanging above the hallways, indicating where they led. Wally's collection, mummy exhibit, hall of mirrors, Crouchy. He read the signs to himself as they walked.
You'll be staying in one of our storage rooms. We have some old mattresses and blankets for you. It won't be too bad,
Charlie said, as he looked down in Liam's direction. He was still visibly shaking. It was clear he was scatterbrained. Normally, he wouldn't let himself be taken away by a stranger, but being on the brink of death, any glimmer of hope was worth pursuing. They continued walking. About halfway down the corridor, Charlie hooked a left, to which Liam followed suit. Further down this hallway was a door with a sign jutting out above, reading, "Storage."
Here we are.
Charlie begrudgingly spoke. He opened the door and flicked the lights on. It was surprisingly empty for storage. In fact, it really didn't seem like they had much to store. The room was pretty sizable. Shelves lining the walls, boxes here and there, nothing remarkable. Charlie walked up to one of the boxes, picking it up and opening the lid. He quickly flipped it over, dumping out the contents onto the floor. A deflated air mattress, as well as a small pump, fell to the floor.
I'm not even sure why we have this shit. Consider yourself lucky, kid.
As he fiddled with the mattress and pump, Liam turned his attention over to the wall on his right. Old, open and closed signs, varying in fonts and sizes. He noticed at least 3 variations of the "Free Hugs" sign that Hugs often sports around his neck. Liam had never seen these ones, though. Liam looked back to Charlie, who had finished inflating the mattress. He got up off his knee and threw the pump off to the side, noisily hitting the floor. He then silently gestured with his hands, sarcastically presenting the mattress to Liam.
Feel free to take a nap or whatever, I don't care. If you need anything, just holler my name. I probably won't hear, but it's worth a shot. I'll be back in a few hours.
Charlie snarkily said, as he opened the door and walked out, slamming it shut behind him. Liam took a mental note of Charlie's peculiar behavior. He seemed drastically different from the others. Well, Liam thought to himself. He was just standing awkwardly in the middle of the room, no longer crying. There was just too much for him to process at this point. He felt hopeless. There didn't seem to be any use in running or screaming. Liam's mind continued to wander. If I'm gonna get killed, I might as well sleep through it. He accepted his fate. After watching Noah die, and knowing there was a good chance his mother was dead too, he almost hoped someone would come into the room to kill him in his sleep. After all, Charlie's sympathy felt out of the blue. Perhaps this was just a cruel, elaborate ploy to lengthen Liam's misery. Now, laying on the cold air mattress Charlie had given him, he tried his hardest to go to sleep. It was tough, but he forced himself. Into the void of sleep Liam drifted, tossing and turning, whimpering and crying softly as he deficiently slumbered. His dreams were only somber visions of his mother and Noah, the people he'll most likely never get to see again. Silence. Liam awoke, his eyes fluttering open. The room was still dark. It was black? Liam questioned. The room wasn't this dark when he had fallen asleep.
Liam.
He heard a quiet whisper in his left ear. He tried to jolt his head into that direction, but he realized he couldn't move. It was at this point Liam tried to sit up, but he was paralyzed. Oh my God, this can't be happening. Not now, Liam thought to himself. Sleep paralysis. This wasn't the first time Liam had to deal with the issue. Back home, Liam used to suffer from severe episodes, often resulting from some sort of emotional scarring. It had been a couple years since the last one, but it made sense to Liam why one would trigger now of all times.
Hey!
He heard a whisper in his right ear. He pointed his eyes in the direction of the whisper. Something immediately jumped out to him. There was a figure leaning against the wall, wearing a familiar golden hat. Charlie? Liam uttered in his own head. The figure eased off the wall and emerged from the darkness. It was Charlie, but it wasn't. He looked older, and he was visibly heftier. His facial features were drastically different. His normally round, cartoonish eyes were now human in shape. His nose was much bigger, jetting out over his mouth, which now had sharpened teeth. Shh! The seemingly monstrous version of Charlie raised his finger to his lips, which Liam noticed another major difference. His fingernails were longer and jet black. They reminded him of Crouchy's, just shorter.
Why you sweating so much, kid? Don't worry. Clowns scare me too.
He let out a maniacal cackle.
Your life is changing fast. You know you don't want to be here. What are you gonna do about it, though? There's nothing you can do.
Liam's breathing quickened, shorter strides between his breaths.
Hey, slow your breathing, kid. It's nothing to lose your soul over.
The older-looking Charlie knelt to the floor, easing himself into his sitting position. He bent in, creeping his face close to Liam's.
Don't take this the wrong way, kid, but that hair makes you look like a goyle.
He let out a hearty laugh. Despite looking way scarier than the clown that Liam was familiar with, he was still the cynical asshole he always knew him to be.
Liam!
Liam suddenly awoke from his sleep with a scream.
What the fuck, kid? You've been asleep for like 12 hours, and I've been trying to get you up for 2 minutes. Everything all right?
He stirred. I get...
Okay, good. Glad to know you're all right. Here, come on.
Charlie hastily interrupted. He lowered a hand down to Liam, who groggily lifted himself to his feet and rubbed his eyes. It was hard to walk, but he managed to slug his way over to one of the nearby walls and rest his back up against it. Charlie paced around the room, quietly whispering to himself. It seemed he was letting him recover from whatever night terrors he had experienced.
So, I should probably take you down to the lounge. It's currently 11 p.m. We just closed up shop a few minutes ago. Everyone's there. It'd probably be the best time to get you acquainted with the others,
Charlie said as he stared Liam down with his head tilted. Liam remained unresponsive. He was starting to let his guard down, but he maintained caution. Part of him still hoped that this was just a scheme, merely extending his death sentence. The scene of Noah's death, still fresh in his memory, replayed in his head on a loop.
Hey, come on, we got coffee, soda, and water in our lounge.
Charlie opened the door and motioned with his hand. The two walked out of the room, Charlie shutting the door behind him. Upon exiting, a small porcelain clown doll stood staring in the direction of the door with a hollow head that was lit from inside. Seemingly noticing the two of them walking out the door, he quickly turned to his right and strolled off. What was that?
That's our security right there. He roams around and reports anything weird to Wacky.
But he looks just like a doll?
That's 'cause he is. Well, I think so anyways. He's kinda like a robot, actually. He can talk, but he can only roll around. He can't really move his limbs. Anyways, come on, let's go.
He led Liam through the speedway once more. Liam was so exhausted that he could barely read the signs. But before they knew it, Charlie was knocking on a door to the left. He halted in his tracks and continued to knock. After a few taps, the sound of a chain being lifted off the door and the turning of a deadbolt could be heard on the other side. A clown with purple hair and yellow eyes peeked his head out the door.
Oh, hey Charlie. What's with the kid?
Hugs questioned.
We're all good, no worries. This is the one I told you about earlier.
Hugs nodded his head and opened the door. Behind it was a huge lounge area.
What?
Liam said in shock. The room was surprisingly nice for a place like this. It was quite sizable and open. The walls were painted a deep shade of maroon, similar to that of an old theater, lined with couches. To the left there was a large table. Sitting atop was a coffee station, as well as an array of sodas and pre-made appetizers. To the right, there they were, the rest of the clowns. The colorful cast sat around a circular table. Wally and Wacky seemed to be engaged in conversation. Hugs walked back over to Swirls, who was standing in the corner of the room. Charlie brought Liam over to the table, where Wacky and Wally sat.
Wacky, here he is,
Charlie said, as he tapped him on the shoulder. Liam stared Wacky down with hatred.
Oh, hey, bucko. How are you? I'm terribly sorry about earlier.
Liam continued to stare, feeling nothing but pent-up rage. If he were in possession of Wacky's hammer, he'd probably be pummeling him into the ground, similar to how he treated Noah.
Yeesh. Well, this is awkward,
Wally said under his breath.
Can it, Waldo?
What did I tell you about calling me that?
Wally raised his voice.
Oh, sorry, I meant to say pedo.
Charlie scorned. Wally jumped out of his chair. Before anything could happen, Wacky reached under the table and brought out his iconic yellow mallet, which he slammed on the table as hard as he could.
Enough!
Hugs and Swirls turned their heads to listen to the commotion. The room stayed silent for a minute. It was unbearably awkward. Wally finally spoke up.
I'm gonna grab a cup of coffee.
He walked away from the table.
Well, maybe speaking to Wacky isn't the best idea right now. According to your notepad, you've met Hugs before. Have you met Swirls?
No, I don't think so, Liam said in a hushed manner. Charlie directed Liam to follow. They walked up behind the clown, who was chatting with Hugs.
Yo, Swirls, this is the kid.
Swirls turned around.
Well, howdy. You're the Liam Charlie's been talking about?
Liam gulped and nodded his head.
Welcome to Wacky's Wonders,
he excitedly said. His eyes began to swirl faster and faster as his grin grew bigger. He reached into his back pocket and grabbed a handgun. Liam instinctively ducked to the floor when he saw the gun. Swirls raised it into the air and fired a celebratory gunshot, breaking a light bulb in the process.
Whoa!
What the fuck?
Wally exclaimed in the background. Swirls holstered his gun back into his pocket and pulled Liam off the floor.
Sorry, I get excited when I'm sober. Speaking of...
Swirls hunched down to Liam's eye level.
Look into my eyes, Liam. You want to go grab me a bottle of booze off the table. You want to do it so bad.
Swirls taunted Liam. He began to lose control of his body, moving muscles that he himself wasn't moving. Liam mindlessly walked over to the same table where Wally was using the coffee maker. Next to it was a bottle of whiskey. Wally was pouring himself a mug of coffee, the steaming pot in his right hand. Liam grabbed the bottle and turned around, not bothering to bring the bottle close to his body. He hit Wally square in the middle of his right arm, causing him to splash the scalding hot coffee all over his jumpsuit.
God damn it!
Liam waddled his way back over to Swirls, whiskey in hand. Swirls eagerly snatched the bottle.
Thank you very much,
he exclaimed. With that, Liam started to fade back into reality.
What just happened?
Liam questioned.
Works every time.
Hugs giggled and muttered to himself. Liam remained speechless for a short while, standing still and wondering what had just happened. His confused trance was quickly broken, however, by the sound of the door swinging open full force. Everyone in the room turned their heads toward the noise. Through the door came a little girl with blonde hair and a blue dress. She was tugging on something. It looked to be an arm. Liam recognized the arm sticking through the door due to the pale white hands and long black fingernails. They belonged to none other than Crouchy. The little girl was tugging on his sleeve with all her might to try and fit him through the doorway. Crouchy managed to slip his right arm into the doorway and grasp onto a wall, while the little girl was still tugging on the sleeve of his left arm. Charlie rushed his way over to the door. He grabbed onto Crouchy's left arm and aided the girl in pulling him through. Crouchy's head was now visibly easing its way into the doorway, when all of a sudden, boom! Crouchy's giant frame came jetting through the door, landing on his stomach, while Charlie and the little girl fell on their behinds.
Oh my god.
Charlie sighed.
It's a workout every time.
It was at this point Liam was starting to wonder what sort of drug-induced hysteria he could possibly be in. To him, this was straight out of a cartoon. Charlie rose to his feet, helping the little girl to hers, and gave her a pat on the back.
Hold up, big guy,
he told Crouchy. He walked over to the table where Wally was cleaning himself up, his nose glowing with anger. Charlie bent over to pick up something off the floor near Wally's feet. As Charlie lowered his hand, Wally kicked his arm forcefully.
Ah, goddamn!
In a fit of rage, Charlie came back up and punched Wally square in the temple, knocking his lights out. Wally collapsed onto the table, bouncing off and landing on the floor. Charlie took a deep breath, Trying to calm himself down, when he felt he had enough composure, he turned around. Everyone in the room was staring him down. Liam, the little girl, Wacky, Hugs, and Swirls, who had his video camera out, strapped to his right hand and holding the whiskey in his left. He was wearing a huge, shit-eating grin. Crouchy, due to his inability to watch what had just happened, had his hands clasped over his ears. Everyone in the room knew he didn't like loud noises, or the sound of conflict for that matter. Charlie cleared his throat.
Well, where was I?
He thought for a moment, when an object on the floor caught his attention. He lowered his hand back down to the floor. When he came back up, he had a bucket in hand. "Free candy," the bucket said, scrawled on with red paint. Wouldn't be surprised if Hugs made that, Liam thought to himself. Charlie walked over in front of Crouchy.
Hey, Crouch!
He whistled. Crouchy uncovered his ears at the sound of Charlie's whistle. He looked to be intrigued. Charlie grabbed a handful of candy and threw it directly at Crouchy. Crouchy, visibly excited, shifted onto his knees and began feeling around the floor, collecting the candy as he found it. After he was sure he found each and every piece, he dumped it all into one hand and catapulted the candy right into his mouth, wrapper and all. Charlie crept up behind Liam.
Now, ain't that something?
Liam jumped.
Relax. Hey, come here. There's someone I want you to meet.
He ushered Liam over into the little girl's direction.
Liam, this is Mia. Mia, this is Liam.
Hi, Liam said as he bashfully waved at her. Mia remained unresponsive.
She's not a real big talker, but see, you're not alone here.
Charlie reassured Liam.
Hey kid, want a tour of Wacky's? Considering we just closed up now, would probably be the best time.
Sure, I guess. Liam reluctantly spoke.
Alright then, let's go. I need to blow off some steam anyway.
Charlie walked up to the door and held it open for Liam. As he walked through, Charlie shut it behind them. The two of them wandered through the halls, the clown and the kid. Charlie took him through various rooms, explaining the purpose and functionality of each. Liam was trying his best to pay attention, but his mind couldn't help but falter from time to time. This is gonna be my life now, he thought to himself. As Charlie continued the tour, he brought him to one of his favorite rooms. Oh hey, this is the mummy exhibit, Liam excitedly said.
Yeah, Raleigh wants this place. He takes real good care of his areas. He dabbles around in his collection room a lot. I came in here the other day when he wasn't around and pissed on the floor. You probably heard him say something about that over the comms. Let me tell you, I was laughing hysterically for like 20 minutes.
Liam giggled to himself. Why do you hate each other so much? He asked.
Have you met the guy? He's a creep. A pedophile.
Charlie shook his head in disgust. Liam's mind wandered. Why are you so much more friendly than the others? The clown's mood changed. He looked apprehensive, as if he didn't want to continue the conversation. He let out a long sigh.
Look, there's a lot you don't know, Liam. Curiosity killed the cat.
Charlie said. He sounded firm. Liam sensed that he wanted to talk, but it was almost as if he was holding back for an unknown reason. Liam wasn't
I know you're probably not tired since you just woke up not too long ago, but I should probably take you back to your room. Unless you want to go back to the lounge.
I want to go back to my place. I could use the quiet. I still need time to think.
Understandable. Come on.
They started to head back the direction that they came from. What the hell is happening to me? The boy thought. First, they kill my friend, probably my mother. Now I have to live with them? Better than being homeless or dead? Maybe. He pondered. As he continued walking, he felt a tug on the collar of his shirt.
Whoa, hold it, bucko. Where you going? Your door's right here.
Oh, sorry, I spaced out.
Yeah, I could tell.
He opened the door. Liam entered his way into the storage room. Charlie remained still at the doorway.
Well, I'ma leave you alone for now. You can go back to sleep if you want to. If you get bored, then you know where the lounge is. Should be easy to find one of us. Don't hesitate to find me if you're bored.
He offered. Okay. Liam stuttered. Charlie gently closed the door. Liam sat on the inflatable mattress, twiddling his thumbs, thinking to himself. This is it, huh? He laid down on his back, staring at the ceiling for what felt like a good hour and a half, until he eventually began to drift into unconsciousness, getting drowsy as the minutes ticked by, until, eventually, darkness. Liam awoke. He sat up, resting his forehead in his hands. He was feeling particularly ill today. He lifted the covers off of his body and got on his feet, standing up and letting out a large yawn. He thought he might as well check out what everyone else is doing and find out what time it is. He stumbled his way over to the door, making an effort to stretch his legs and arms as he drew closer. Upon opening the door, everything looked to be the same. He shut the door behind him as he left, making his way towards the lounge. He could make out a figure walking towards him in the midst of his blurry vision. As the figure drew closer, he came to the realization that it was Hugs. Hugs, what time is it? He tiredly asked.
No idea,
Hugs said, as he continued to walk past Liam without even batting an eye. Liam continued to walk down the hall towards the lounge. As he opened the door, he turned his head to the right. Sitting at the main table was Charlie, his back turned to the door.
Look, Wally, if it's you, I'm not gonna apologize.
No, only me, Liam said in response. Charlie turned his head.
Oh. Hey, Liam. How's it hanging?
Shouldn't you be out somewhere? Isn't Wacky's open today?
Yeah. Ain't like I have a designated spot to be, though. I just kinda wander around. I think everyone else is where they're supposed to be if you wanted to see anyone.
I just ran into Hugs in the hall. It seemed like he was in a rush. Liam sat down at the table across from Charlie. I couldn't sleep last night. I spent a good hour or two just thinking.
Thinking? About what, huh?
Do I really have to say? Liam said, with heavy sarcasm in his voice. Charlie chuckled. A minute of awkward silence followed, but it felt like an hour. So, Can you tell me more about that little girl?
Mia? What about her?
Well, like, how did she get into this situation? Like, how long has she been here?
Well, for starters, she's been here for months. I've honestly lost track. As for why, she won't tell me. All I remember was walking into Crouchy's room one day. A mutilated body was on the floor, and Crouchy was trying to put this little girl into his toy box. Fortunately, I was there to stop him. Since then, I took the box out of his room just in case. We didn't want to kill the girl either, so I convinced the others to let us stay.
Charlie reminisced as he stared into space. What about the body? Liam asked.
Not sure. I can only assume it was a family member. Maybe mom or sister. Not sure.
A moment of silence ensued.
You know, it's funny actually. She's grown fond of Crouch despite what he did. But I think I'm the only one she truly connects with. After all, Crouchy can't even talk. I'm the only one she's ever willing to talk to. She started referring to me as her Uncle Charlie, which, to be honest, I don't mind. It even has a nice ring to it, wouldn't you say?
He said, as he smiled and made eye contact with Liam. Liam smiled back. Yeah, I guess it does. Silence once more. Why are you so much nicer than the others?
Excuse me?
You're way nicer than the other clowns. It's honestly shocking, Liam said as he squinted his eyes at Charlie.
Well, I guess if you were in my shoes, you'd understand. I didn't used to feel this way, you know?
What do you mean?
Well, I sorta found some things out about myself, I guess. Sorta changed my entire view on life. I used to be like the others, until I learned to appreciate what I got. That is, I've sorta made it a thing for myself to help the kids that the others try to harm.
What did you find out about yourself? When Liam asked this, it was as if you could see Charlie's expression shift from casual conversation to a look of sadness. He looked visibly apprehensive to talk.
I know something about this place that none of the others do. Something about ourselves. I'm not sure if I can say. I don't know if they could hear us.
There's no one else in the room. How would they be able to hear us?
No, not them. Them.
Charlie reached into his back pocket. When his hand came back to the table, he was holding something, what looked to be like a small piece of cloth.
These guys,
Charlie said, as he handed Liam the cloth. Upon it was a logo of some sort, a geometric spiral. Is this the GameCube logo?
No, it's not the GameCube logo. It's a cooperation. They call themselves Nova.
Never heard of it.
Have you ever wondered why we look the way we do? Why the place is the way it is?
I mean, yeah, I have.
It's because of these guys, Liam. Look, I can't get into it anymore. I've already risked way too much just bringing it up.
Alright, I guess. I do just have one more question, though. How come only you know of whatever this is? Liam said, as he held up the cloth with the logo on it.
A clown in a silver suit told me. He told me everything. He gave me that fabric right there.
Clown in a silver suit? I've never seen one of those around here, Liam said.
I've only seen them a few times. I don't think anyone else has. Actually, never mind. I can't get into it. That's why only I know. You can't let any of the others know I said anything like this, okay? They'll start getting suspicious. Besides, if I tell them, they'll go crazy. Even worse, we lose our food.
Huh? Liam said with a raised eyebrow.
The guys that belong to the logo. They know I know. I struck a deal with them. They wanted to keep me alive after I found out, but they wanted me to keep my mouth shut, of course. So I came up with a compromise. I keep my mouth shut if they supplied us with food and drink of our choice, as well as some entertainment devices and such. That's why we have the coffee and soda and all the other shit on that table. Same reason Swirls has a video camera.
I see. That at least makes a little more sense. I'm still not following, though.
Good. It's best you don't.
Charlie said as he stood up from the table.
Look, I'm gonna go take a breather. Gonna go chat with guests and such. Feel free to do whatever. I don't really care.
Charlie walked out of the room. Liam was alone in the lounge now. There was nothing for him to do there but think. Not much of what he had just been told made sense to him, but he figured he might eventually learn about it over time. Scanning the room, Liam noticed the same clown doll from earlier, except this time, it wasn't moving. It was just standing in the corner of the room. How did he not notice it before? Well, Liam thought. He wanted to clear his mind. He decided he'd take a day stroll around Wacky's. He really wanted an excuse to utilize the corridors that Wacky Mole calls his speedway. Liam got up and left the lounge. Scanning his surroundings, he could see path markers, arrows mounted on the wall pointing in the directions of certain rooms. Crouchy, he read aloud on one of the markers. Might as well see what the big guy is up to. He walked down the corridor leading to Crouchy's room. Upon reaching the door, he decided he'd crack the door open to see what was going on. The door creaked open ever so slightly. There was Crouchy, sitting on the floor, the curtains to his stage closed. He was playing with a Furby, an orange and black one with a witch hat. Crouchy heard the door open and turned his head in its direction. Liam shut the door. Well, that was weird, Liam thought to himself. He made his way back the direction he came. He analyzed his options on where he could visit next. Wally's Collections, he read aloud. He decided he'd make his way over in that direction. Once he reached the door, he repeated what he had done when he was at Crouchy's. He slowly creaked it open. No one. Wally wasn't present, and the room was void of any visitors. A waste of a trip. He walked back the direction he came. He looked at the overhead signs as he walked, as well as looking for more path markers. One eventually caught his eye. Wacky's Auditorium, it read. Down the direction it pointed was the hallway Charlie had originally used to lead Liam away from his potential death. At the end of this hall was that familiar clown doll. This time, its eyes were glowing faintly yellow in the distance.
Follow me.
Liam heard the clown doll say from a distance, in a very soft voice. This was the first time he had heard him speak. The clown turned to his left and roamed straight into Wacky's room, wobbling and jerking around as his wheels rolled over some cracks in the concrete. Do I really want to go back there after what I saw? He thought to himself. He stared down the vacant hall with its gloomy walls and overhead lights. He made a decision and started to walk down the hall to Wacky's room. 11 p.m.
Closed up shop yet, Wacky?
Charlie asked.
It's been closed all day. Both entrances to my room miraculously locked themselves after I had left to go talk to Wally. All my lights are still on, and my hammer is still in there,
Wacky said, with clear annoyance in his voice.
Great. I'll unlock it for you. I hung the keys back up in the storage on the corkboard when I left the lounge this morning. Hopefully Liam's awake.
Charlie began walking in the direction of the storage, eventually reaching the door. He knocked gently a few times, waited for a few seconds, and heard nothing. He decided it would be safe. He gently opened the door. It was black, as per usual. He flicked on the light switch.
You in here, Liam?
He awaited a response.
Guess not.
He said as he walked up to the wall the keys hung upon. After he left the room, he made his way back up towards Wacky's room. Wacky seemingly disappeared, probably expecting Charlie to close up for him. He made his way down the corridor, leading to Wacky's stage door entrance. Fiddling with the keys, he eventually found the right one and opened the door. The lights were off. This was especially strange to Charlie, considering Wacky had just told him he was locked out all day and left everything running. Something felt off. He slowly made his way out onto Wacky's dark stage, feeling his way around so he didn't trip or run into anything. He took his foot off the stage and placed it on the ground. Crunch.
What the fuck?
Charlie said as he instinctively jumped back. He took a much larger step off the stage and avoided whatever he had hit before. Making his way to the other side of the room to turn on the house lights, he reached the control panel. Flick. The light switch responded. Once the lights came on, Charlie turned around.
What the fuck?
Liam laid on the ground right in front of Wacky's stage, with his arm resting atop, now snapped due to Charlie unknowingly stepping on it with all his weight. He jolted over to Liam, kneeling next to him. He rolled Liam over onto his back. His eyes were wide open, his skin was pale, and worst of all, a hole in his forehead. Presumably a bullet wound. A puddle of blood on the ground. Charlie scanned Liam's corpse. The notepad Charlie had found on the floor a few days ago was now in his pocket. He noticed some new writing on the very top of the page that was visible. He hurriedly snatched it out of his pocket and read it carefully.
You violated the agreement. We are terribly sorry for what we had to do, but seeing as you gave up information capable of tainting our operation, we had no choice but to terminate the potential threat. If you choose to violate this agreement a second time, we will have no choice but to terminate you next.
Wacky, get in here!
Charlie shouted. Wacky came running down the hall.
Charlie, why are you yet?
Wacky stopped dead in his tracks on the stage.
What the hell? Charlie, I didn't do this.
Wacky exclaimed.
Those fucking bastards.
He said as he thrusted his fists together. Charlie turned around and slammed a fist on the wall. Wacky noticed Liam's notepad on the floor. He reached down to retrieve it. Upon grabbing it, he read the letter.
Charlie, what is this?
Wacky quizzically asked.
Wacky, tomorrow's Halloween, right?
Yes? Why?
You'll just have to trust me, Wacky. It's a big day tomorrow. We've got a lot of visitors coming. It's perfect. A perfect day to show them. Wacky, we have planning to do.
What the hell are you going on about, Charlie?
Charlie paused. He took the notepad from Wacky's hand.
Wacky, I have a lot to tell you.